Hello everyone and welcome to Ask Apogee Live. My name is Rob.
I'm Roger.
And welcome to the third edition of Ask Apogee Live. We are here in Apogee headquarters in Santa Monica, California, here in the conference room.
This is where it all goes down.
Well, today's theme is speakers and monitoring. So we're going to talk about how to connect your interfaces to your speaker system and what type of cables and connections and a lot of those sorts of things. And all of these questions are from you guys. So these are our most commonly asked questions in our Ask Apogee inbox. So if you do have a question for us at any time, you can drop it in the comment section below. Or when we're done with our live stream, you can always head over to apogeedigital.com and click on the Ask an Apogee Expert button to ask us a question directly, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But for today, we're going to dive into some of the most commonly asked questions.
Absolutely.
And our first one is, how do I connect my interface to my speakers?
Right. And, we'll have a couple of simple questions for those who are just getting started. So we'll start out with maybe a few really basic questions, and then we have a few questions that are really sophisticated. So if you might know the answers to these first questions, hold on, and we'll really get into some more sophisticated answers. So how do I connect up my interface to my speakers? So here I've got a quartet. Here I've got a speaker. You'll notice that the quartet line outputs are 1/4 inch, and my speaker has an XLR female input. So for that, I would need an adapter. So there's an XLR male and a 1/4 inch connector. You'll notice, though, you probably can't see it, but this is a TRS. So it is a connector that has 3 sections to it. And that's pretty key. And it really has to do with the fact that quartet is putting out a balanced signal. Without getting too much into the balanced signal, it's really how professional signals are transmitted. So you want to make sure to have a balanced connector for your quartet output. Come over here.
And this is the same with duet and quartet and other products as well. So.
Indeed. And that's really one of the great features about those products from duet and quartet is you do have a fully professional output at a level that really a professional console would expect and accept. So having professional outputs is a real key feature. So then I'm just going to come over here and come into my XLR input. Now, again, you want to make sure that you're going into the balanced input. Most speakers also have a setting that, for example, here it's somewhere there about +4 or -10. And again, +4 being the professional level, you want to make sure that you've got that switch setting. It's really the nominal level. So you want to make sure that's set for +4 or professional level. So that's pretty simply how you do it with the quartet duet.
Awesome. And this is with a powered speaker, correct? So
that's a good
most
point.
Monitors today have amplifiers built in.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So if you have a powered speaker, which is the most common studio monitor today, you'll plug in this way. If you have a passive speaker, kind of an old style, like an old NS10 or something like that, you'll want to plug that connector, of course, into your amplifier.
Into your amplifier.
But
right.
most new speakers have the amps built in, and makes it nice and easy.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's a simple one for you. Now the next question is a little bit simple, but some people have asked this question. How do I connect my speakers to a Symphony IO Mark II or into the back of the extra speaker ports of the Ensemble Thunderbolt?
Right. So really, probably 15 to 20 years ago, audio manufacturers started using the DB25 for their analog line outputs. Again, allows you to have balanced connections, but in a much smaller connector. And in fact, I think most multi-channel audio interfaces now use this DB25 connector. And so what you'll need is a breakout cable that goes from DB25 and again to usually an XLR fan out. And again, it's making sure that it's a balanced cable and then finding the right pair of XLR male outputs to go into your speakers.
Yeah, so that's how we can fit up to 32 inputs and outputs on a two unit rack.
2-unit, yeah.
So you have that small connector that breaks out. And
it's worth saying that there are different format cables. So you could get a cable that looks exactly the same, but has a different wiring format. So really, they refer to this as the Tascam format. And for our analog outputs, that's the cable you want to get.
Tascam format for the analog outputs
Yep.
on the D sub or DB25.
Right.
So commonly asked question there. All right, and let's get into our next question here is, a lot of people ask us what makes Apogee's speaker outputs different from other interfaces. So we talked
Right.
about the professional line level, but kind of at the converter level, what sets Apogee apart from other interfaces?
Right. And here we're getting a little bit more into some of the sophisticated aspects of our products. If you think about it, you've got a line output from your interface, and you've got a line input into your speakers. And if you were to run that straight, your speakers would just blast at full level. So you obviously have to turn down the signal somehow. Turn down the signal that's coming out of your line outputs. Back in the day, that was just a good old potentiometer. This is actually a potentiometer from a mini DAC. And this is literally just a resistor that you apply to the output signal. Turns out, though, that these, they're susceptible to the same thing that any analog part has. It can degrade. Scratchy pots. I think we've all had that experience where you turn it and starts scratching and sort of wears out.
Nobody likes scratchy pots.
Yeah, nobody likes scratchy pot. So 10 years ago, actually, Apogee was one of the very first to use a digitally controlled analog pot. So you could send digital commands to that analog pot, potentiometer, and then that would reduce your signal level. When it came around to Symphony IO, we noticed that the DAC performance of this new design was not fulfilling our requirements, was not really living up to our expectations. And it turned out that digitally controlled analog pot was limiting Symphony IO's performance. And so at that point, we went to a fully digital attenuation. Now, if you say digital attenuation, most people say, well, no, that's not the way to do it. Well, here's really the trick. If you're using a fader in your DAW, there you're taking a 24-bit signal and you're turning it down. And so as you turn it down, you're losing resolution. Don't want to do that. So what we are using is a 32-bit attenuation. So we're attenuating a 24-bit signal with a 32-bit algorithm. So you really get the best of all worlds. You get it ensures that you get the full performance of your DAC, and absolutely no loss of resolution. Now here's the trick, is that most interface manufacturers, they actually are using the solution that we had about 10 years ago. A lot of them are using these digitally controlled analog pots. They're called MDACs. And they fundamentally limit how good your DAC can be. So we've really taken the next step. And it's a kind of a significant innovation that we've done.
And so what products have this digitally controlled analog attenuation on them?
So we're going back to the AD and DA16X.
And then the new products that we have, the digitally controlled digital attenuation.
Starting from Symphony IO. So Symphony IO, Duet 2, Quartet, of course the Element, and Symphony IO Mark II. So it's really, Symphony IO was the first product where we kind of made this change to improve our performance.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty cool stuff for those of you who want better sounding monitors coming out of your interface.
Yeah.
So we get a question a lot about monitor controllers, and it's common, of course, to have multiple speaker sets. You'll have maybe a big pair to impress the clients and a smaller pair for making mixing decisions, or maybe you'll have a bigger pair to check your bass and a smaller pair to kind of check your mid-range and highs. So a question a lot of people ask is, I have 2 or 3 sets of monitors in my studio. Do I need to spend the money to get a monitor controller?
A monitor controller, yeah, that's a really great point. For the longest time, your audio interface really had lines in inputs and outputs, and then you had that separate box of a monitor controller. Is that monitor controller going to degrade the signal coming out of your converter? Well, it depends how much money you've spent on that monitor controller. We've really made significant effort to incorporate monitor controller functionality into all of our products. So with Quartet, you have the ability to hook up 3 sets of speakers to Quartet and then control them with these touch pads that are on the top. With the Ensemble, we went even further. So you've got 3 sets of speakers that you can assign to buttons on the front panel. And of course, they also have mute, dim, and some which are kind of classical monitor controller functionality. And of course with Ensemble, and now with the Element series, and soon with Symphony IO, we even added TalkBack. So I think with each advancing product, we've really made the monitor controller less and less necessary, to the point where kind of our current products really have everything you need for a monitor controller, including speaker switching.
Yeah, and one of the cool things I like about Quartet is that you have these buttons here that you can assign to switch between your different sets of monitors too.
Right.
So you can really easily just like tap the button, and the Ensemble Thunderbolt works in the same way. You can just tap the button, go monitor set 1, switch it to monitor set 2, and you can really kind of check your mix reference that way.
Right.
The sum to mono feature, like you said,
it's
always good to check to see what your mix sounds like in mono, because you want to make sure your phase is all coherent and you don't have any phasing issues there. So,
and it might be a thing to try. Start your mix in mono on your smallest speakers, and see how good of a mix you can get with that very limited setup. Then hit the stereo button, go to your bigger monitors, and maybe with the fact that you're listening on small speakers in mono, you've really been able to work out any masking issues. That's where the masking issues can come up, even if you don't have phase issues. Being in mono, for me, helps to really sort out masking, and once you've done that, then your mix will really sort of come alive. So it's kind of a bit of an esoteric tool, but I think it can be very useful.
And it's just one button on all the Apogee interfaces, sum to mono. It's a really great way to check your mix. So cool thing there. So the next point is for our friends in maybe post-production, film production. Here in Los Angeles, we get this question quite a bit. So I have a 5.1 surround sound setup.
Right.
Do I need a monitor controller for that?
Right. 5.1? 9.1, you mean?
Ooh.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
all the way.
We're going all the way. So of course, Sennheiser's new immersive audio format is a 9.1 format. And so with Symphony IO, if you have enough outputs, if you have a 16 by 16 card, you can configure Symphony IO for 9.1. 5.1 obviously a lot more common, and many of our products do 5.1. Remember, we've got this digitally controlled attenuation, so we can designate as many of the outputs to be attenuated. So I set this up for 5.1, my Quartet, and this one knob will control all 6 outputs simultaneously. Same thing with Ensemble, which offers 5.1 and 7.1.
Yeah, so Symphony, Ensemble, and Quartet all offer surround sound monitoring. And I know audio engineers in the business are always looking for new opportunities, new ways to build a new client base, make more money, kind of maybe use your services in different ways. And surround sound can be that a really cool opportunity for you. So if you haven't gotten into surround yet, maybe you want to get into game audio, or you want to get into audio for film. You can get a surround sound system, hooking up to your interface, and it's really fun. It sounds amazing too.
And anything having to do with TV, with network, a lot of those people just have to monitor in 5.1.
So a little business tip for the engineers out there: if you want a way to grow your studio business, maybe get into surround sound, and if you have an Apogee interface, you'll be set to go. So we've got a few questions here. So one from our friend here from Sisman here. He asked if you guys are planning to release an interface with USB-C. So we tackled this a few weeks ago in our Ask Apogee Live, if you want to go watch that video. So actually, the way to connect USB-C, like on the new MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, is through the Apple adapter. It's inexpensive here in the U.S. It's a $9 adapter. So just to answer that question for you, all of our interfaces work with these new USB-C Macs. You just need this simple Apple adapter.
Right. Yep.
We have another question here. Brian asked that will that color your output? And so I think you made a good point, Roger.
Will that? I wonder what he's...
maybe the difference between using a monitor controller and going directly through your interface.
Right, yeah.
And so going directly out of your interface is a much less colored solution. Yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. Really, the answer to the question is, what's the quality of your monitor controller? I think the idea of having digital attenuation, it is by far the purest method for connecting up a pair of speakers. It is the ultimate in purity, most definitely.
Awesome. And our friend Ka here, who's got a Symphony IO. If you want to head over to our support page, it's just apogeedigital.com. You actually click on the button that says Chat with an Apogee Expert. A member of our support team can get on with you right now and walk you through your setup and get you back up and running. So if you're having any sort of issues, you need to get in touch with tech support, click on the chat button. Our tech guys are standing by right now, and so they'll answer your questions to get to...
Operators are standing by.
Operators standing by.
Good.
So, awesome. Just, another really cool tip that I wanted to share.
Okay.
We did a surround sound event here in Los Angeles at an Apple store, actually.
Right.
And we were joined by the legendary Bob Clearmountain. It was such a treat.
Yep.
And Bob shared a really cool tip with me that I want to share to you guys if you have a surround sound setup. And there's all this talk about calibrating, how to calibrate.
Right.
Especially in 5.1, there's all these rules. There's books that are like this thick on calibrating surround sound.
Which format, the European format, the
angles at which your rear speakers, and Bob gave me a really great tip, a bit of word of wisdom, and he said, what I do is I take my iPhone and I get one of those kind of metering apps, a basic metering app, and put it in the center, the sweet spot of your surround rig. And then through each speaker, you blast pink noise.
Right.
Basically just straight up noise at every frequency.
Yeah. Every plugin, so many plugins that come with your DAW probably has a pink noise generator.
Pink noise, Logic, Pro Tools, Ableton, whatever you're using, you can blast pink noise. And basically, he said, what you do is you just blast the pink noise out of each speaker and make sure that your meter, which in this case is just an iPhone app, is registering the same level of pink noise from each speaker.
Right.
And it's pretty amazing. Like we had this system, we set it up, we blasted pink noise, we kind of balanced all the speakers. It took 10 minutes.
Right.
And we played back the surround mix, and it just came alive instantly.
Right, yeah.
Everything was in perfect balance.
Yep. And the pink noise method takes into consideration the acoustics of the room. This speaker is close to a hard surface, whereas this is next to an absorptive surface. So all of that, a measurement, if you're using your tape measure, that doesn't take into consideration the acoustics, whereas Bob's method does. So it's as usual, it's clever and simple.
And you guys can do this with stereo too. It's another cool tip if you have left and right, and you want to balance the two monitors to make sure your mix signal is balanced. You can use this same calibration technique in stereo. Just blast pink noise through one speaker, blast it through the other speaker, and set your levels.
Yeah.
So, monitoring tip from Bob Clearmountain.
That's great. Yeah.
Well, guys, we got some questions here. We really appreciate your questions. We have a few here about Windows support. Apogee does have 2 new Windows compatible products. So the Jam 96K for Windows and Mac, and the Mic 96K for Windows and Mac. So,
and of course, Groove.
Groove, yes.
is compatible with your Windows machine.
So just wanted to answer those questions for you there. So we have some Windows options for you guys. Yeah. Awesome. Well, any other questions you have, stop by apogeedigital.com and hit the Ask Apogee button or the Chat with an Apogee Expert button. And we'll be back with you next week, so Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific. And thank you guys so much for tuning in.
All right. Bye-bye.